Hello, Betty, and thank you so much for making the time for
Yes.
this interview. And I've known about, or I heard about you not so long ago in an interview with Matthias Schmentek and Robin Dalton.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Yeah, they teach about the wheel of consent, as you know. And another friend of mine, she loves your work. And since I'm very interested in touch, and I'll explain to you why that is,
hmm Great.
you are the person to talk to for sure.
Thank you.
So, first of all, a little bit about me, because you don't know me at all either. I make vegan makeup. And
Great.
the makeup itself is amazing, and there's a thought behind why I make it. And one of
hmm
the things that is part of what I want to bring into the world is that have people touch themselves more when applying the makeup.
Huh.
And yeah, I'm also really interested in helping people stepping more into healthy sexuality. So
Yeah.
I think those topics are.
Yeah. So why vegan makeup? Isn't all makeup vegan?
No,
Apparently not.
no.
No.
There's so for instance, you have sheep and pig fat in chemical
Mm,
makeup, and then you
mm,
also have like the red color.
hmm
That comes from crushed beetles. And
Oh, right. I've heard of those guys. Yeah.
yeah,
Which they use in food apparently also.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 Yeah, so yeah, that's a whole story in and of itself. And for
I bet.
yeah. Yeah. So for me, it's not just about about the not use of animals, but it's
Uh-huh.
a bigger thing than that. Just awareness
Yeah. Yeah.
for everything with everything.
Yeah. And so you had designed this and manufacture it?
Yeah.
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 Awesome. Well, I look forward to hearing more about that later.
I will definitely
Yeah.
tell you more
Yeah.
later. Yeah, and I would love to have everyone hear about you. You are, well, I've seen your website, and you've done a lot of things already, and you do a lot of things with regards to touch, and you're a touch expert, actually. Can you,
That's true. I am.
can you tell me a bit more?
Sure. I'm a mother and a grandmother, so that involves a certain amount of touch.
Yeah.
And I grew up in the hippie years, for which I'm very thankful.
Yes.
So in the height of the 60s, everybody was puppy piling with everybody. So there was a lot of touch going on there, and I grew up with it feeling pretty natural to me. I went to chiropractic school. I was a practiced chiropractic for about 30 some years. So I had my hands on people all day long. And that touch is very much about, first of all, taking in information with your hands, because you're feeling the joints and the muscles and what's moving, what's not moving, all that. So you're taking in a lot of data with your hands. And then, of course, applying the treatment with your hands. So that was very much about touch. In my mid-40s, after divorce, I wanted to learn some more about myself. Who am I as a sexual being, as an erotic being? I took some workshops with some women, and then some other workshops with men and women together, and spent 5 or 10 years really diving into that exploration with another handful of people who were also experimenting and wanting to learn about ourselves.
Because until that time you hadn't, am I correct?
Well, I was reasonably functional and healthy sexually. I mean, things were working okay. I was having a good time. But I knew there was more. I knew there was more depth that was possible. I knew that I wanted to know myself better. It's not that I wanted to have okay, how are we going to have better sex with this person? It was like, no, who am I?
Yeah.
what is this part of me? What's the interplay between my sexuality and my spirituality and my emotions, and just, like, how does this thing work? Who am I? What's it like in here?
Yeah.
And those workshops were with a group called the Body Electric School, which is mostly has events for men. It was a gay men's organization at the time.
Oh, that's so amazing.
And they developed some things for women also later.
Yeah.
But a handful of us were on a similar path. And so we'd get together and we would use the techniques and things that we had learned in the workshops and then experiment with that. And it wasn't about sex per se, meaning it wasn't about inserting something into an orifice. It was about how can we express ourselves? What do our bodies want to do? What am I capable of experiencing? Where does this take me? The first workshop I went to, which was for women, it was a weekend workshop. There was a lot of movement and breath to get us experiencing our bodies more. There was a lot of sharing our sexual histories and our stories, and it was clothing optional, so most of us were naked most of the time. Turned out to be very, very healing and affirming, because this is this part that we sort of pretend doesn't exist, or it exists only for this purpose, or it exists and I'm ashamed of it, or it's dark, it's dirty, it smells bad, and all the other terrible stuff, like.
Yeah.
And so by sharing that beautiful aspect of ourselves, that just gets healed, because you realize that this part of yourself is precious. And you see, among other things, what an amazing variety of shapes and colors and sizes and configurations, and it's just an extraordinary experience. So that was one of the things that we did. Another thing we did was a particular massage style. You use breath work, so you're breathing in certain patterns that increase your excitement level. And that's a practice all its own. It has really nothing to do with sex, but it's certain breathing practices. And then combine that with being on the massage table where someone is touching you all over in whatever ways that you want, so that you get to be completely in your own experience that is not about who the other person is. It's not about falling in love. It's not even really about sex, if you define sex as these two people getting together. So this other person is assisting you with their hands, assisting you to have an experience in which you get to experience yourself. And the touch combined with the breath work creates an intensified state. There's a lot of shift in energy in the way you feel, and insights and tears, and sometimes it's very quiet and meditative, and sometimes you're, oh my gosh, and sometimes it's ecstatic, and lots of different experiences. But the point is that it's not actually about sex in the sense of connecting with another person. It's this person is assisting me to have an experience in which I learn about myself.
Wow.
And that was huge. That was a life changer for me, actually, for a number of reasons. One of the things that I came out of it with was understanding that my sexuality belongs to me, which made me wonder, well, who did I think it belonged to?
Yeah.
And I realized, as I look back on my reasonably sexually satisfying life, that my sexuality up to that point was always in response to someone else's and to someone else's desire towards me.
Wow.
And then I realized, oh, wait a minute, my eros belongs to me and arises from within me. And I can bring it out and play with it if and when and with whom I choose and the way I choose. That was a big, big aha for me, which I didn't know I was missing until that point.
I will really have to listen to that one more time, because something happened within me when you said it. I missed it.
Yeah.
So I will go back and transcribe this anyway.
Yeah. Our eroticism arises from within ourselves.
Yeah. Wow.
We own it. It lives here. This is where it comes from. And we get to choose what to do with it. Yeah. Yeah. So that started a 10-year journey of experimenting with the other people who had also taken the workshop.
Yeah.
And just seeing where else that took us. And we made an agreement during those years of exploring that we would not engage in genital sex, or what people think of as sex intercourse. That was off the table. And that allowed us to experiment with lots of other things with each other and with ourselves, so that it was clear to us that we weren't here to fuck each other.
Yeah.
We were here to learn about ourselves.
Yeah.
And we would assist each other in learning about ourselves.
Yeah.
That made all the difference. And that's a very unusual experience. I feel very, very lucky to have had it.
Very respectful.
And it completely changed my life. And it changed the direction of my professional life as well, because after about 5 or 10 years of that, I realized this was something I wanted to offer to other people, to explore their erotic selves in a variety of ways that I could offer.
Because it brought you so much.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also already had 30 years of practice in teaching body-mind integration stuff. I had taught peer counseling for a long time. So it was my work was already very holistic. So this was adding sexuality and eros to a practice that was already, I was already working with people. This added another element. And when I started doing that work, I felt like, and I do feel like, it's the most me my work has ever been. It's very, very satisfying. Yeah.
How does this, because if I interpret it correctly, you are also on the helping people into their power and explore their own sexuality, which for me means moving into healthy sexuality, whatever healthy means.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you view the world at this point in terms of healthy sexuality? Where do you see room for growth?
That's a good one. Well, one of the things that I learned as I started working with people, which was a little bit of a surprise, was that, you might think, okay, a client's going to come over here, we're going to put them on the table, we're going to do this fancy stuff to them, and they're going to have their ahas and change their lives. But it doesn't actually work like that. Not everybody is ready for that. It's not useful for everybody. That's a very narrow, it's the one small opportunity of many. And I found that what was really the most rich and insightful and challenging for people was the smallest, simplest act of asking them how they wanted to be touched and letting them notice whatever they noticed about themselves. And discovering how many people, number one, didn't know. And we all have times that we don't know. And, that's normal. How often they didn't know, how often they didn't know how to know what they wanted, because no one had ever asked them that before. And how easy it was for all of us to go along with being touched in some way that we thought was supposed to be great, but it wasn't that great. So we think, well, there's something wrong with me because I don't like what's happening to me. And how many times people just didn't know that there was anything else. That like, okay, the stuff is happening, and so I guess I'm okay with it, or maybe it's great, or maybe it's not, but it's going along. And that when we slowed down enough to notice, no, what is it that you actually want right now? What sounds wonderful to you right now? That opened a whole different door. And it's challenging. I mean, take a turn with your partner and ask them that. How do you want me to touch you? And how do you want me to touch you? I don't know. And yeah, so that turned out to be a much richer place to explore. And that became really the center of my work. And the Wheel of Consent, which people can see later, that all grew up out of that, out of asking hundreds of people, how do you want me to touch you? And discovering how hard it was for people.
Even that sentence, like even the word touch and you, for me, it already feels like something like, I can't really explain. Maybe you can feel maybe from experience, but the whole, how do you want me to touch you already feels like I hope I'm not crossing a line.
Right.
It's really interesting what's happening.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot that happens in that question.
Yeah.
One is that I'm inviting you to notice what it is that you want.
Yeah.
Well, that's hard for everyone. Not only in touch, but in our lives. I don't know of anyone who's, when they were small, they asked for something from their parents, and their parents said, "Oh, what a good job you're doing of asking for what you want."
Yeah.
Not likely.
No.
Instead, we got, who do you think you are? You shouldn't ask for that. You're too selfish. All that stuff.
Wow.
And so we somehow learned from our culture, from our religion, from our families, we somehow learned that wanting something, you're not supposed to want anything. And if you do want something, you're not supposed to admit it.
Yeah.
Because then if you admit that you want something, you can be hurt and shamed and ridiculed and disappointed and everything else. Yeah. So if you just don't want anything, everything's easier.
Then you're safe, yeah.
Then you're safe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it turns out that this question goes much deeper than one might think at first.
And that's so amazing. Something so seemingly small and simple, which is also nice because you can just explore from left to right, up, down, round and round. That's amazing.
Right. Yeah.
How would you, everyone that's watching and listening and is curious how it is with themselves, how would you, what kind of practice would you give these people?
That's a great question. I want to go back and answer something you said a moment ago, and then we'll come back here. Is that okay?
Great, yeah.
You were talking about your own response of with that idea of being touched the way we want, and I think this is one place that happens. When we are small, we are touched against our will. Everyone, no exceptions. If you had perfect parents, they still had to do things to you that you didn't like. You had your nappies changed, you got your teeth brushed, things happen. And so this happens before we can talk. So that means it goes very deep. in our nervous system and in our psyche. It's like we learn that the nature of touch is that it happens to us, and we have to figure out how to be okay with it.
Wow. Yeah.
So touch happens, we adapt to it in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the early learned process.
Yeah.
And so that teaches us that the stuff that's happening to us is more important than how we feel about it. Because even if we don't like it, it's still happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have to deal
And
with it.
so we have to deal with it. And so if that is your body's main experience of touch, which it is to some degree for all of us, then we grow up, we start getting affectionate touch, we start dating, we start being sexual with people, and we are doing the same thing. Well, the sex stuff that's happening is more important than whether I like it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And so we figure out how to like it as best we can.
Yeah.
Is this making sense?
It makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And it happens so early that we don't even notice it. And I notice this so many times with clients, and then you see it with clients, and then of course you see it in yourself, is that it feels so normal to go along with stuff that we just don't, it never occurs to us that there's another option.
Yeah.
So instead of changing ourselves to go along with the action, what we need to do is reverse that so that we change the action to go along with ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's a complete reversal of what we learned as babies.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And so many times the idea that, wait a minute, you can choose how you want to be touched is like, really? You know? Yeah, it's very, very deep, and our bodies know how. The bodies know how to go along with stuff.
At the moment, I have an amazing relationship with a very loving man, and he's super open to feedback, and we are very open to each other, although it's sometimes just like, am I really saying this? Oh no, are you saying
you're right.
Like that?
Yeah.
And still we take the risk, which I notice already helps a lot. And sometimes not at the moment itself because it's too painful.
Yeah.
And then like shortly afterwards, definitely.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And it's a risky place when we communicate that what we want or what we'd like better or anything. It's risky. Of course it is. That's nothing wrong with you because it's, that's the way it is. Yeah, absolutely. So it takes some courage. It takes starting with small pieces that are maybe a little less scary than something else. Yeah. And for most people, it's much easier to talk about it outside the bedroom than in the heat of passion. Yeah, that's just the way it is. Yeah. And there are people who teach some wonderful ways to do that.
Yeah. What have you learned over the years? What is like the common denominator when it comes to, or is there, can I ask it like this? But there's something that most people like really struggle with and really benefit most from. Are there some things that you've learned throughout the years that you're like, that is exactly something that I would love to give people, and I would love them to explore in order to grow?
Well, that's a really great question. Well, one of them is this practice that you were asking about a moment ago. And that is our relationship to the experience of pleasure in our bodies. Because pleasure is another one of those things which we get very mixed messages about.
Yeah.
On the one hand, we're not really supposed to have any.
Mm-hmm.
And on the other hand, we read the magazines, we're supposed to have lots.
Yeah.
But we're supposed to have the kind that other people think we're supposed to have. It's just a big mess. And the messages that pleasure is a little suspect are very deep and very early, because they come, we're a little tiny kid and we're playing in the mud, and then shame on you, you shouldn't be doing that. And so, so those things tend to be very deep, but this is a practice that I play with people, and people listening, of course, can try this. And there's a video on my website about how to do it. But I have people pick up an object in their hands, anything, a pen, a toothbrush, a shell, whatever, an orange, and use your hand to feel what the object feels like. And you'll spend a few moments or maybe a while exploring the object. Oh, it's bumpy over here. Oh, there's a sharp thing here. Oh, it's stretchy over here. Oh, it's fuzzy over here. And so you're using your hands to take in information. And if you stay there a while and do that, and do it slowly, after a while, you have this sort of switch in your brain where you're no longer attending to what the object is. You're attending to how it feels in your hand. So it started out as an orange. Now it doesn't matter what it is, because you're just using it to make your hand feel pleasure. So you might take the pen and scratch it across your hand, or you use your fingertips to feel it, and really you're using it to tickle your fingertips because that feels pleasant to your hand. Yeah. So your hand, instead of being a tool to get things done, your hand becomes a source of pleasure to you. And your hands have more nerve endings than anywhere on your body other than your lips and your genitals. They're very, very sensitive. So you can actually experience a great deal of pleasure in your hands. So what happens is that as you're exploring this pin or this orange or whatever you have, and you notice, oh, that feels really good. And you just kind of like, oh, it feels really good. And what will happen is that you'll have some feelings come up about, oh, well, that's kind of weird, or shame on me, I'm not supposed to feel this good, or okay, that's enough pleasure for me for now. Or sadness is very common. Things will come up. Sometimes it's a big relief. Oh my gosh, I forgot that I had this. Wow, this is amazing. Lots of different feelings will come up because that's our feelings about our pleasure. It has nothing to do with sex. It has nothing to do with love. It's not giving pleasure to someone. It's not someone doing something to you. It's the most simple neurological pleasure circuit.
It feels like reconnecting to yourself.
Yes, it is. It's an amazing experience. And sometimes it takes a couple of minutes for it to click. Sometimes it takes longer. Sometimes it takes 20, 30 minutes or an hour or several weeks. It can take some time because we were taught early to kind of cut that off. Yeah. For lots of reasons. I'm sorry?
My whole body tingles from this.
Yeah. It's quite yeah. And I stumbled on that exercise by accident, which is another story. But after I started doing it with clients, then it took me a couple of years to notice how powerful it was in people discovering themselves. and how big an effect it has in recovering our ability to experience pleasure in a very direct way. There's no theory here. It's not, oh, this is pleasurable because it's going to lead to sex, or it's pleasurable because I like the way it makes my partner feel. There's no partner there. It's just you and the orange, so it really is the simplest neurological connection of that sensation. Am I able to take in sensation, and am I able to experience that sensation as pleasure, which of course happens in the brain? And what happens when I do that? Do I remember how? Am I okay with that? And if it brings up tears, am I okay with that? It's a very rich experience. And you can do it a little at a time. You don't have to overwhelm yourself. Yeah. And it's an experiment.
Wow.
Yeah.
Then there's the 3-minute practice.
Yeah.
You can do with your partner. And I would love to, you can do it with you can do it with friends, and you can do it with family. I would love to learn from you, or to hear, how is it with couples? Like what comes up generally with couples? Or maybe
that's a good one.
A little on what it is exactly.
Yeah, that's great. So the 3-minute game is a game I learned way back at a workshop, and I took it to play with my clients as a way to see where they were. And that has become really the center of my work. But the 3-minute game is 2 questions, and you take turns asking each other these 2 questions. You can play it with your partner, you can play it with your children, you can play it with a stranger at a workshop. It's not about sex. And the 2 questions are, how do you want me to touch you for 3 minutes? Which is why it's called the 3-minute game. And and then you answer that, and you do that if it's agreeable. And then, how do you want to touch me for 3 minutes? And if it's agreeable, you do that. That second question is a very different question. And it's the one that people will trip over the most.
Yeah.
How do you want to touch me for 3 minutes? It's not about what you think I want. I'm asking you what you want. How do you want to touch me that gives you pleasure? Not about whether it gives me pleasure. Well, in order for you to touch me in a way that gives you pleasure, your hands have to be awake. If your hands don't know how to experience pleasure, they're not going to be able to experience pleasure by touching me, because they don't know how to experience pleasure. And this is where that exercise came from, was feeling the object. Yeah. So that's the 3-minute game. And there's some examples in other video on the website and on YouTube that go into it in more detail, but that's really it. 2 questions, take turns asking 2 questions. So here's what happens with couples, which is pretty interesting. One thing that happens is that as a couple, you already have your habits. Yeah. And every relationship includes some degree of telling the truth and some degree of hiding the truth. That's true of everyone. So when my partner says to me, how do you want me to touch you? I have to pause and notice, what is it that I actually want here? Now, am I going to tell the truth about that? Or am I going to try to please the partner? Because, I know they like to give me this, so I'll ask for that.
Yeah.
That's not the truth.
No.
The truth is, I would like my head scratched or my ears rubbed or whatever it is. And so what it does is create this opportunity for more telling the truth than you perhaps have been doing so far. Well, that can challenge a relationship. It always can. Any increase in truthfulness will challenge the relationship. So that's one thing that happens. Sometimes I have had couples say, well, it's too contrived. We just want to be able to play better. And it's true that it's contrived. It's a structure. But it doesn't replace the time that you do get to play. It's a practice. It's something that you come back to again and again because it gives you a different kind of experience, and it also develops the skills that you need so that then you can go back and play in an unstructured way. When you're playing this game, what you'll notice is that we're taking turns. When it's for you, it's for you. So I need to get my own ideas out of the way. When it's for me, it's for me. And it's my turn to be selfish. And learning to be selfish can be very difficult. Yes, this is familiar? Yeah.
For me, definitely.
Yeah. So it can really, some couples find, oh my gosh, this is amazing. We're having so much fun. And, and other couples will go, ooh, this is hard.
Yeah.
And sometimes I've had people who said, we tried it and I just don't like asking for what I want. So we quit doing it.
Yeah.
And I would say, oh, honey, how's it working for you?
Yeah.
Yeah. But there's no doubt that it can very easily challenge you because it's vulnerable. That's the way of it. And some relationships have room for us to be vulnerable and some don't.
Yeah, I wish for all relationships to feel that vulnerability and to feel that.
Oh, yeah. That's just, yeah.
And am I assuming right that if you practice this enough, or if you practice this, let's just say, practice this without how much, and your hands and you yourself become more aware, so the quality, actually you say that as well, the quality of your touch increases, and also the quality of being more sensitive, both ways.
What will happen is that the quality of your touch goes up, because when I'm touching you the way I want, say you have asked me the second question, how do you want to touch me? And I say, oh, I'd like to feel that shape of your face right there. Or I'd like to feel your arms. Or may I play with your hair? My hand is doing what my hand wants to do, and it's feeling you, and there's nowhere to go. There's no technique. There's no getting the job done. It's just my hand exploring, feeling what it wants to feel. What happens is that my hand is going to relax because there's nowhere to go. There's no job to do. And my hand is also going to slow down. Because if I'm actually feeling that shape of your face there, my hand is going to go slow. Because if I go fast, I can't feel very much. That's just the way our nervous systems work. So I'm feeling this lovely outline here of your face and your neck. And so my hand relaxes, becomes very sensual, and it feels very different to you. So as we play with that more, my hands just get more and more sensual and more relaxed and more attentive, because I'm noticing your skin, I'm noticing your changes. And so that affects the quality of touch whenever I touch you for any reason. And that really deepens and brings a very high quality of touch. at the same time, your skin is now learning, oh, this is what real touch feels like.
Yeah.
This is what touch feels like when there's no job to do.
No agenda. Yeah.
No agenda. And your skin goes, fuck that agenda. Give me more of this.
Yeah.
That's what happens over time in particular.
Yeah.
So that your skin becomes pickier.
Mm.
Your standard goes up for the quality of touch that your skin can enjoy and will tolerate. And after a while, mediocre touch, just like, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
It's like, ugh.
Go away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go away. So, that could be a problem.
Yeah.
As raising your standards about anything can cause problems.
Yeah.
That's always true. Yeah. So sometimes both parts of a couple are really excited. Oh, yeah, let's learn this. Let's experiment. Let's find out what we find out. And some couples, that's not true. It's probably more often true that one of the partners will say, I want something better and I want to learn. And the other partner might not want to.
Yeah.
So that's not always easy.
Can imagine. And
yeah.
I'll just go for, I think everyone should just go for this and then.
Yeah. Of course.
Of course. And Betty, I see that it's 45 minutes later. Do you have time for a last question? Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a bit, what is your favorite way to be touched?
I like lots of kinds of touch. I like scratching. I like squeezing. I like a very slow caress. I like a contact that's fairly solid. I don't like tentative. I like weight on top of me. And I also like to lie down on top of others. I like to also move. So I play with contact improvisation because I like to climb around and move and roll and so I like lots of things actually. And I like sometimes when someone's doing what I want, sometimes I can get very picky about, like, I just that spot right there. Yeah, right there. Other times it's less picky, but more exploring and when you want your back scratched, you want it scratched in just the right spot. Other times it's the connection and the play that's more interesting than just getting the right spot.
Yeah.
I also love being in the role where you're touching me the way you want. And so I'm giving you my body, so to speak. And I find that very enjoyable because the other person is really showing up. And there's a realness and a presence in that that's just really lovely. Yeah. Yeah. We have plenty of time, no problem.
Yeah.
You were interested in self-touch because you're talking about touching with the makeup.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, well, so what I've noticed ever since I've been making and selling this, for instance, I also have a deodorant that you have to apply with your fingers, and that people were like, how do you, just with your finger, you touch your armpit? And I was like, yeah, it's your armpit.
You touch your armpit every day when you take a shower.
Which made me realize that there's this thing around that. And then my lipsticks, you haven't seen them. They come in a box.
Ah.
You slide it open.
Uh-huh.
And you can do it with a pencil. I love doing it with my fingers.
Finger.
I have
Yeah.
black hair, so I just put the rest in my
Yeah.
hair. But
Yeah.
apart from that, I also noticed that one girl said, at first I thought, really, do I have to touch my lips with my fingers? And it was not even about her finger getting colory. It was
Mm-hmm.
more like, I don't know how and where. And that brought to me. Actually, it was when I went through this first resistance, it felt really sensual, and I loved touching my own lips. And I
Yeah.
thought, wow, I love this. I so love to hear this. And then I had a few more experiences with people that were resistant at first, and later thought, this is actually really nice to get to know my own lips as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was so curious to hear from your perspective as a touch specialist, touch goddess,
Yes.
what do you think about this applying makeup with your fingers?
Yeah. I think it's perfect. It's interesting, those different reactions, which I guess are not too surprising, because any kind of touch, whether it's ourselves or someone else, there's the actual sensation of the touch. And then there's all this other meaning that we attach to it in our heads, which is stuff we had to learn somewhere.
Mm.
So, in touching another person, it's often about, well, are they going to like it? Then will they like me? And if they don't like it, and if it's the wrong thing, are they going to leave me? Are they going to blah, 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 blah. Yeah. And in touching ourselves, it's kind of makes us notice that we're here. It's not just some theory. It's like there's a person here. And as soon as you start to notice that there's a person here, you could very easily have feelings about your own self-doubt, your shame about pleasure, your doubts about whether you are beautiful enough, or whether you're smart enough, or whether you have the right kind of lips or the right kind of skin, or blah, 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 blah. Yeah. If you can just get the stuff on there and get out the door, you don't have to deal with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
You could maybe get like a space age station where you go in there and just goes, and it's all on. You wouldn't have to deal with any of that. But now here you are. Oh, I'm a real person. This is my lip. This is my chin. This is my skin. This is how my skin has changed with my age. Oh, these are my wrinkles. It's very intimate. And so it's not surprising that it could be challenging at first. It's also not surprising and quite wonderful that as people play with it, they start to notice, oh, that feels nice. And it's like me giving myself a little bit of affection and intimacy.
Yeah.
Just, that little bit. Oh yeah, that feels nice.
Yeah.
It's kind of a self-love act.
Yeah.
Yeah. My lips are enjoying my finger, and my finger is enjoying my lip. Yeah, that's very rich. Yeah. Yeah. And, we women, we are just pounded upon with this bullshit that we're not enough, we're not beautiful enough, I have too much hair here, not enough here, it's the wrong kind, I have bumps here, I'm saggy there, blah, 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 just like goes on.
Yeah.
And it's what I've noticed in working with people, including myself, about that is that if you're looking at your body from the outside, of course you're going to have these judgments about it, because none of us look like so-and-so. Like nobody does. Not even they do, because it's all airshopped, airbrushed.
Yeah.
But when you start to feel your body from the inside, Well, that's really amazing, because the pleasure that my skin can feel, holy cow, it's mind-blowing. And so when I can start to experience my body as a source of pleasure, oh, hell yeah. Now I really like my body, because look what it can feel.
Yeah.
That's a very different experience of our bodies than looking from the outside. And as we set up situations in which the pleasure is all about me, so we do that by taking turns. Today it's all about you, tomorrow it's all about me. And my body learns to feel the kind of pleasure that I'm capable of, which completely changes my relationship with my body. I love my body because I know the pleasure that I'm capable of. That's a very different thing than, I don't love my body because I sag over here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so great.
So the experience of caressing your face, and what I would encourage people to experiment with is use your fingers to play with the object, see what you notice with your hands, and then use your fingers to explore your face. And just like you had never felt the face before, like, what is this thing? Oh, here's a bone here. There's muscles here. And just feel it with your fingers to get acquainted with it.
Yeah.
And see what you notice. It'll be interesting. Yeah.
Exactly. And I was just thinking, I touch my lover's face more than my own.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah. I touch my lips a lot, but then the whole face, I don't really play with my own face. I play with his face.
Sure.
So that's a really good one as well.
Yeah. You can also turn it around. So you're focusing on your finger. Okay, what does my face feel like? How does this work? You could also then focus on your face and use your hand to do what feels pleasant to your face. And experiment, and like giving myself a little face caress is much more intimate than a massage. Yeah.
Wow.
And the face is a very intimate place to touch with each other as well, of course. Yeah.
Very, very sensitive and vulnerable. Yeah, I don't let a lot of people touch my face, and I don't touch people's face out of the blue. Like shoulder over face.
Yeah. No, it's very intimate, very vulnerable. Yeah.
Oh wow, it's amazing talking to you. I could talk for hours to you.
It's very fun. We could do it again sometime.
Yeah, great. And I would like to end this video, and then afterwards I want to ask you something, but off record. So thank you so much.
You are very welcome. You're very welcome.
And one more thing, you're writing a book.
I'm working on a book, yes.
When is it out?
I expect it to be out by the end of this year.
So that is The Lover's Touch?
Well, I don't know the name of it. It started out as The Lover's Touch, but it has changed. It's probably The Wheel of Consent. I'm not sure. It's about receiving, giving, taking, allowing. And you'll hear of it. Don't worry.
I will share it with people that watch and put it under a video. And for now, thank you so
You are so welcome. And if people want to know more about the consent and the giving, receiving, the 3-minute game, my website is bettymartin.org, and there's many hours of free video there. You can help yourself. And there's some things on YouTube as well.
Yeah, and I will definitely put the link in the description.
Great.
Thank you, dear. With when I share the video, because I've seen your videos and I love them a lot.
Thank you.